Hello everybody, and thank you for joining me. This is Sierra from Sierra T Designs, and today I have this really fun, vibrant spring moth card to share with you. So let's jump right in. So to start, I am going to create the background. This is kind of going to be like my own pattern paper, which is kind of my idea there. And I have the Holtz Moth Study stamps, and I just have them on different acrylic blocks. And I have a weird array of acrylic blocks, but I just kind of have, I think I have 5 moths stuck on the blocks that I have. And I'm kind of just stamping them randomly in the background. I know it's really difficult to see on here, but of course I can see it in the light. If I tip my head or I tip the cardstock, I can see where the moths are in the background. So I know it's not really great for the camera, but I promise I can actually see them. So I'm just kind of stamping them all around in the background. And then I am using a piece of HammerMill Cardstock here. It's one of the smooth cardstocks because I want to blend on some Distress Oxide inks. So I used that cardstock intentionally. If you wanted to do a watercolor background with this, of course, you could use watercolor. I just chose to blend with my inks because I haven't done that in a while. And you did see me treat the cardstock with an anti-static powder bag. And then I'm using Versamark to kind of stamp in there. And then I covered it with some Alabaster white embossing powder. And I saw that there was a few areas that were kind of bare, but there's no really small moth in the set. So I brought out the kind of swoosh of stars that came out in the Stamp Timber release from Tim Holtz for 2021. So this isn't available anymore, of course. Moth Study is, but the swoosh of stars or sparkles there is not. But any small stamp would do. This is just one of the only smaller stamps that I own that was not like a sentiment or something like that. Because the Moth Study has other stamps in it, like little circle stamps, but I wanted something a little more obscure. So I stamped the kind of swooshy stars in the areas that had nothing in them, and then I covered them with that same embossing powder, just to kind of cover up the background. Now, obviously not every square inch of the background needs something on it. This is just kind of my own pattern paper, but I did kind of want to have these kind of fun swooshy stars. And I chose Moth Study mostly because I purchased it a while ago. I think Tim Holtz brought this out for Halloween, and I hadn't used it yet. And you guys know, if you've been with me for a minute, that I'm going through my stash and trying to, to use things that I haven't used yet, so that everything I own has a little bit of love. So I pulled out some Tim Holtz stuff that I haven't used recently, or I haven't used it at all quite yet. And I just thought this is kind of a fun way to bring in that star swoosh stamp and these moths. So I'm just going to show you here. This is actually a design that I created. It holds my domed blending foams. So I'm just showing it to you because I have had some questions about it and I haven't showed it in a while. And I have a whole video about this itself. So if you want to go check that out, you absolutely can. It's a free download, and I show you in it how I think I just show it to you. I will be revamping it once the last 4 colors are out. I made this before Tim Holtz released the newer 12 colors. And 4, of course, are not out yet. So there is a flip side on the first one that has room for those 12 colors. They're just not labeled. So once the last 4 colors are out, I will, revamp them, put everything in color order, and then I probably will do a video where I actually recreate it and I sit down and create it with you guys. If that sounds interesting at all, let me know so I can plan that out. But yeah, so then I brought in 4 Distress Oxide colors here. I have Squeezed Lemonade, Spiced Marmalade, Picked Raspberry, and Wilted Violet. And it's honestly just because I love vibrant, bright colors. You could, of course, do any blend here as long as you're careful with colors that are not going to make browns. And of course, unless you want brown, in which case, there you go. But just be aware that, for me in this, purple and yellow are going to make brown. So I'm just very, very careful where the purple and yellow are touching, and I didn't go through and blend that very much because I know that they will make a muddy color. So I kind of just touched up where they were and then left it alone, and I didn't touch it again because I didn't want them to create a brown or grayish color in my background. But yeah, so as long as you stay away from complementary colors, or you're very, very careful about where you place them, you can absolutely do this with any color combo and it would still look great. So I just brought in a piece of paper towel, and then I just kind of rubbed off any of the ink that was sitting on top of my moths. And then, of course, because I can't leave anything alone and everything needs to have as much shine as humanly possible, I brought in my Perfect Pearls. It's mixed up in this little mini mister bottle, and I just kind of splashed that around the background to add some extra shine in it. And then I have, it's the Perspective stamps, but I have a set that aren't red rubber because mine came in a kit a while ago. You used to buy, I don't know, maybe you still can, but you used to be able to buy kits from Michaels, and they were Tim Holtz kits, and they would have kind of like random stamps that were really popular. So I have one, and it has like 2 stamps out of the Perspective stamp set, and then a couple of stamps from one of his flower stamp sets. It's kind of odd, but I have the actual Perspective stamp set listed in the description down below if you're interested in it, and I will pick it up. It's on my list of stamps that I really want to purchase, but this is what I own, and you guys know that I'm very big in using what you have in your stash. So I brought in, and yes, this is a butterfly, not a moth, but I didn't have a big moth to go on the front. Well, other than the Perspective moth die, and that one is huge for my A2 card, and I didn't want to cover up that much of my background. So I did bring in this Perspective butterfly instead of another moth, but I still think it looks good. I think that they are kind of interchangeable. I think they all look really beautiful together. So, and I stamped them down on a heavyweight vellum, the butterfly and my sentiment. And my sentiment is something that I probably need to practice a bit more. I believe it says there's beauty in simplicity, which if you guys know my kind of card making, I'm a bit of a more is more style of crafter. So I always kind of need to try to rein myself in a little bit, but I struggle a lot of the time because I just want to add all the pretty things. And then I brought in this is the 3rd size die out of the Tim Holtz Stacked Tiles rectangles. It fit that sentiment perfectly, so I used it to cut it out. You could, of course, use your trimmer, or any rectangle die would work for this. And then I used my mini snips just to cut around the butterfly because I don't have a die for this. I don't even think there is a die for it, actually. But because there isn't, I just fussy cut around it. I have no issue fussy cutting. I know some people really don't enjoy it, but I find the easiest way to fussy cut an image is to hold the scissors in your dominant hand and the image in your non-dominant hand, and then only move the image. Don't move the scissors. Hopefully that makes sense. It kind of makes it a smoother cut and a little easier on you, and slow down. This is sped up, first of all, so I mean, it's not a good justification of how quickly I can cut. But second of all, I do it a lot. So I may, when my supervisor showed up there, I may cut slightly faster than other people, but that's not relevant to anything. I mean, whatever you want to do, you can do it. I mean, people use scan and cuts and stuff like that too. I'm not totally sure how those work, but you absolutely could. And then I have my little Xyron sticker maker. I usually forget that I own it, so I rarely use it. But the sentiment didn't stand out enough on the background for me. So I put this through my sticker maker to cover the background in stick, because it makes stickers. And then I'm going to do a second layer of vellum. And I don't notice it right away, but right here when I pull this off, it actually stole my eye. You're going to see it here in a second. In simplicity, in the word in, it stole the eye. So I'm missing an eye now. It just says simplicity. So I used a white gel pen and I just drew an eye back in later when I realized it, but at this point I hadn't noticed it yet. So I'm just going to use my trimmer to trim this out. You could, of course, try to line that die back up and cut it again. That would absolutely work. The trimmer was faster, and I had lines to cut with because I've already cut it, so I know where the lines are. Had I realized that I wanted to double up my vellum, I would have just done that first and then run it through my die cutter, but I didn't realize that I wanted to do that. So I kind of am like doing everything on the fly a little bit here because I wasn't even totally sure what sentiment I wanted to use on this card. But I think that this just is really pretty, and I think it goes great with that butterfly. And then here I'm actually going to adhere it down to the base. So by this point I have drawn in the little eye that I realized was missing. And then I just ran it back through my sticker maker so that I could stick it down to my card front. And I did decide in the end to do a landscape card. I originally was thinking a portrait, but I didn't like how everything laid out, so I ended up in the end doing a landscape, which kind of I gravitate towards a bit more regardless, but I mean, you do whatever light works for you. So I just adhered that down kind of in the bottom corner to the right hand side, and then I'm going to put some Barely Art glue just on the body of my butterfly and the antennae, because I want the wings to be able to kind of prop themselves up. Not a lot, I want it to still fit in an envelope, but enough that it gives a little bit of movement to that butterfly. I like how that looks. And I didn't hang it over the edge or anything like that. I just wanted it to be kind of on the card there. And I did trim this down, you guys saw earlier, and I took about 1/4 of an inch off each side so that I could have a white mat going around it. I like to mat things, so I do have a tendency towards this. And then I really wanted to add the butterfly stamp in the inside of the card, so I just took my blending foams that I used to blend earlier and kind of pounced on the color that was still on the foam and then just snapped it inside. You could, of course, go around this or right over top of it, whichever you prefer. I just thought that was really cool and kind of brought a little extra color to the card. And then I did adhere those little pieces that I cut off of the panel in the inside of the base. And because, as I said, everything has to be as sparkly as humanly possible, I did bring in some Arctic Breeze pearls that I just kind of adhered across. I do prefer corner to corner. I like the look of that. And the whole design is kind of in that element, so I just kind of continued that because I thought it looked pretty. And then I brought in some Spectrum Noir glitter pen and just put it all over the butterfly wings. This again is totally unnecessary and it's super subtle, but when I hold it up in the end, you'll see it and I think it looks really pretty. But of course, it's not necessary at all. The pearls aren't necessary. It's just that I have them and I love using them, so I do have a tendency towards it. So here I'm going to hold up the card so you guys can check it out. Hopefully you love how vibrant this is. I'm really excited by how this card turned out. I'd love to know what you think of the card. Leave me a like, leave me a comment, and I hope you consider subscribing. I do new videos every Monday and Thursday. Thank you so much, guys, and I will see you again very soon. Bye-bye for now.